All right, folks, welcome to What Are the Odds? All right, looks like everyone's live anyway, right? All right, welcome to the odds with Barnes and Baris. As usual, Robert is going to join us shortly. All right, so for everybody looking forward to the theme song, I'm going to blow eardrums out this time. I think we got it. I just didn't want to blow it out, and if I hit the wrong button, it's probably going to be loud, and you're all going to complain how loud it was. So we'll do it on a break or something, and we'll intro it out, and we'll see if I can get it right. All right? So in the meantime, it is what it is. So we're going to talk about Trump's speech today, and thank you, everybody, for joining us. It's been a long weekend, actually, and this is good. I'm happy to be doing this. I've been kind of dying to get on and talk about this, but I'm going to save the clip for Robert until Robert gets on here, and then we'll talk about it because everybody wants to know what they made of this speech. It was obviously an anticipated speech, but will he run again in 2024? Will he not? And I got the crux of it all in this clip, and we'll find out. We'll go through it, but I'm going to tell you why, and I think Robert probably will agree that he's kind of just waiting. But in 2015, I want to bring this up. What we heard is he does not want to run for president again. In 2015, I heard that speech at CPAC. I told the story. Some of you guys, if you haven't heard it, then I'm not going to bore you with it again. But the bottom line is, you could tell he was going to run in 2015. You could see it. It was not something you had to guess about. All right? And this time around, I didn't hear that. I did hear a little bit of a threat, right? Like a little threat. I would say that's what it is. So if you don't, not a threat, but like I'm a watching you thing. And that's very different than what we heard in 2015, which was this can't be just anybody. It can't just be Jeb Bush. It can't be another Bush or another Clinton. The country is headed down the wrong path, and somebody, the right person, has to do this time. And it was clear. Everybody was complaining that he had done this in the past, so they didn't know whether or not he was serious. But you could hear it if you were listening. If you were really listening, you could hear that he was going to run this time. He was deadly serious. This time around, I got to tell you guys, if you were his age, would you want to do it again? Would you want to go through all of the BS again? The only thing at stake for you, if you're Donald Trump, is, well, really two things. One, the country, of course, if you believe you're right, it's the country. And then two, your legacy. You did a lot in 4 years and you want to protect it. He called it a disastrous 2 months. And economically, I don't think there's any doubt that we're not going to get the economic jump that we would have gotten if Donald Trump was reelected. There's just no doubt about it. If you watch Inside the Numbers, we've gone over this ad nauseum. It's early. These indexes die for a reason. It's a complete 180 from what we saw when Donald Trump was elected, which was a soar in optimism, a soar in capital expenditures. They were preparing for the future because they knew what was coming. Now it's the complete opposite. But Trump went into a lot of other stuff too. And you know what, Laura? Actually, what was really surprising to me, maybe not, because Pompeo's maybe smarter than Nikki Haley, but Pompeo's touting of Donald Trump's foreign policy successes, which are going to be all undone under Joe Biden. They're already starting to, including Iran. There's the Jerusalem embassy. This kind of stuff weighs heavily on you if you're looking at your legacy. Mm-hmm. All right, you know, right. How many presidents before Donald Trump said they would, and they all promised, including Barack Obama, that they would move the embassy to Jerusalem, and Jerusalem would be recognized as the capital of Israel. But the pressure that comes is enormous. The pressure is enormous. And they all cave. And Donald Trump did get that pressure. He didn't cave to it. And he kept his campaign promise. And he did it. All of this can be undone very, very quickly. All right. So, and then also, too, immigration, which we're going to talk about when we get into this questionnaire we've been doing. So I do like this idea of this monthly poll. I see Rasmussen going at it back and forth in the wake of, and of course, this is not this is timed because of this man's speech. Everything surrounds Donald Trump. I mean, these people couldn't. I mean, what are they going to do without Donald? They're going to resurrect. If he does run in 2024, it's because these people resurrected him. They couldn't let him go. What are they going to do without him? And all of this is timed around Donald Trump's speech. So Rasmussen's fighting with New York Times, CNN over who's polling approval. Well, I want to do this myself and have a hand in this myself. So I'm loving this idea. And we have some questions to share with you, including on immigration, which is something that you can see weighs heavily on Donald Trump's mind. All right, but what was always most important to Donald Trump was jobs and these trade deals. And there is no chance Joe Biden is going to force China to honor either phase 1 or phase 2, what they agreed with. That's not going to happen. But I think, and I don't know Robert's opinion yet. We're going to find out when Robert comes. I didn't ask him, but we're going to find out. I think this was Donald Trump's way of saying, this is my party. I am taking control of this party. The future of this party is the agenda I set forward. The future, the way forward is the path that I forged. You don't have a path. And how do you know that it was at least somewhat impactful? Immediately, Mitch McConnell comes out and says, you know what? If Donald Trump did run again in 2024, I would support him. This is the spineless coward this guy is. He just moves with whatever direction the wind is blowing. He's like a kite. We should come up with some funny name that references this guy to like a kite. He just goes with whatever direction the wind is blowing. He has no core. You either think he was the worst thing for the Republican Party ever, Mitch, which is what you tell everybody behind closed doors, or you think and that would obviously mean that you think Joe Biden has the better vision for the future, because everybody knows you wanted a Republican Senate with a Joe Biden presidency so business could go back to as usual in Washington, D.C. Or you did believe Donald Trump had the better policy and the better path forward. You can't be swaying back and forth like this. The visions are just too different. He's either right or he's not. You can't be in the middle, or you can't. We're beyond that. We are so far beyond that. The visions that each of them articulate have different people's interests at heart. There is no common ground anymore. I hate to break everybody's bubble. I hate to burst everybody's bubble. There is no common ground anymore. As someone who polls public opinion for a living, we don't believe the same things anymore. Half of the country believes that America should look out for itself and its workers, and the other half thinks that we should conform to a new order, which doesn't necessarily do that, but it's okay because those who vote for them, that they're all right. That system benefits them, just like the Trump side, the system of goods producing U.S. driven markets benefit their lives. Where is there a common ground there? So if you're the former majority leader of the U.S. Senate and you're supposed to be one of the leaders in Washington, D.C., I don't know how you waffle back and forth like this. You're either a fraud who isn't really a Republican, or Donald Trump was right all along. It just kind of thing drives me nuts. Because character, once you realize what I just said is true, character is irrelevant. Character is irrelevant. It explains your character when you're making excuses like that, right? It explains it. That was Robert. He'll be on in 1 second. And I'm sure he's listening. Let's get his take on it. But before he does, I just want to say I don't hear I am running in 2024. That doesn't mean he won't, that doesn't mean he's ruled it out. I just didn't hear it. And I'm telling you, I'm waiting for Robert to play this clip because there's like 45 seconds that sums it all up, which is where everybody got it from, because he made a little wisecrack. But I'm going to argue that there's a big difference between that wisecrack or that threat. It was like a veiled threat. There's a big difference between that and what he did in 2015 to be 100%. If you were really listening, 100% he was going to run. If you were really listening. All right. So he did bring up that the Republicans will win the House back, they'll win the Senate back, and they'll win the White House back. And to me, what that said is, with my guiding hand, we're going to do that. That's what I heard out of him. We, the Republican Party. Because if you really care about your legacy and your Donald Trump, the Republican Party as it is today has got to go. It has got to go. They will never protect your legacy like the Democrats did or tried to do to the death, damn near, with Barack Obama. They did everything to protect Obama's legacy. Obamacare failed. The repeal failed. Everything they did. Elizabeth Warren going to the floor of the Senate and saying millions of Americans are going to die. They're going to die if this traitor from Russia repeals Obamacare. And I mean literally to the death. Because that nice comment sunk into the head of a man named James Hodgkinson, who then took a rifle and decided to gun Republicans down on a baseball field. You think you're going to get that kind of fight out of Mitch McConnell? I'm not saying incite violence, but Mitch McConnell's not going to fight. Mitch McConnell is going to do what he does best. Stuff the pockets of his benefactors in K Street in exchange for screwing over his own voters. That's who Mitch McConnell is. He is a politician. That is what fills the ranks of the Republican Party in the United States Senate. So if you're Donald Trump, the furthest thing from your mind is the White House, in my opinion. You have got to purge this party of people. You know, he's talking about the weak, right? Rambling. Cannot be weak. We can't be weak. The party's weak. He knows that. The party is filled with weaklings. Corrupt little weaklings. All right? All right, so I'm dying to play this. What, you got to...
Volume up.
Volume up. All right, give me a second. I can turn my own volume up in a second, yeah.
Push the button which made you green. You canceled out my white balance.
Oh, well. I'm not going to get into it. And I'll do it when Robert gets on. But it does sound like I'm kind of low, actually.
No,
it does.
they're all saying that they had you turned way up and you're still low.
Okay, I'll crank it, guys. I'll crank it. Give me a second.
And what I'm saying on that behalf is, all I heard was, I own the party, and you're
that
gonna
may be a
have
little
to
better.
start kissing my behind.
Yeah, that's what I heard too. This is my party, and you're going to do what I say. That's what I heard. If you want to survive as a party. Right. That is what I heard. And hell, I mean, I could be wrong, but I really don't think so. All right? I really don't think so. If he proved me wrong, though, let me put it this way. If he proved me wrong, I wouldn't be shocked. I wouldn't be surprised. Because he does that. He does change his mind. All right? I mean, as of when he went home, Laura, when he went back to Florida, from what we heard, he was focused on the lawfare that's being fired at him on the daily, rebuilding his own, his own company. Donald Trump is the only person to run for president, become president, leave the White House with less money. I know of nobody else who did that. The Clintons weren't poor, although they had made some very bad business decisions. They weren't poor, and they came out of the White House filthy rich. The Obamas were like upper middle class. When you serve as a U.S. senator, you're going to make some nice money anyway, and the government pays for all of those expenses that you, the working American, has to pay for out of your own pocket when you do all these things called travel and eat. You don't even pay your own gas once you're a United States senator. All right, and then Donald Trump gave up control of his company, and this is him right here. Donald Trump gave up control of his company, and I think I'm holding him out there. Yeah, man. Let's see.
I have to say, he looked great.
He did look good.
He looked relaxed.
He did look good. There's no doubt about it. He looked good. He looked relaxed. And he's also, speaking of which, he's also one of the only people I know who who
Looked better after a
looks
presidency.
better after a presidency. He really is. He really is. All right. Let me see if I can. It's not doing. It's trying to get. He's trying to fire off some questions. If you, I see them already in the thing. Fire off some. I'm gonna send Robert a new thing here.
Mike Dolan wants to know if he can get a list of people Trump called out yesterday, and still looking for the list of what's in the House of COVID bill.
Wait a minute. Say that again. That doesn't make sense to me.
This is the question I get. Can I get a list of the people that Trump called out yesterday? Meaning, like, the bad people. Like,
can you get a list of them?
Like
I mean,
Cheney
he's called. I mean, look. I mean, I don't have to fire off a list to you. The bottom line is, you know these names, folks. You know these names. Basically, everybody who voted. Everybody who voted for impeachment. The Cheneys. I mean, I don't know. There are other people too that aren't even lawmakers. But right now, he's focused on the Congress. That's what he's focused on. So he does, and McConnell too is of course a main target because McConnell is a main source of his problem. He really is. You don't get elected and reelected and reelected and reelected with a 38% approval rating in your own state. My friends, there he is. There's Rob. Let me bring in Robert, who no doubt is gonna agree. I'll mess with my sound a little bit when we get in.
I want you two to match.
Yeah, I'll try to figure that out. All right, but in the meantime, let me just bring in Robert here. Robert, my friend, you can hear me okay?
Yes, I can.
Okay, I did that. That's my fault. All right, listen. I want to ask a question here. I just went off on like 10 minutes about what I think I heard, okay, from Trump's speech. Tell me what you think you heard, and I got the clip. I'll play it though after you're done, all right? And we'll see where to take the conversation from there. But go ahead. What did you hear when it comes to, did you hear I'm running in 2024, or did you hear I'm threatening you that I may run in 2024?
Oh, definitely the latter. And Annie made clear what we had talked about a month ago, which was the third party threat was a threat to leverage a certain vote on impeachment. Yeah. And once they failed, once most Republicans fell in line, he came and said, hey, that's fake news. I was never going to do a third party.
Yeah.
All that came from Trump, folks. He's the one who leaked that. It's like Trump used to do. He used to leak to the New York Times.
Yeah.
And then he'd turn around and say, they just have fake sources. They don't know what they're talking about.
Right.
The best is people should go back and find the call from John Barron that was leaked during the 2016 campaign that people figured out, that was actually from Trump. Trump, he used to be his own press spokesperson. My favorite, he'd call up and in the 80s and 90s, pretending to be John Barron, slightly different voice, press secretary for Trump, and say, man, you don't know what this guy deals with, man. He has Madonna after him. He has all these women after him all the time. Poor guy. They're wanting to dump Brad Pitt for him. Classic Trump. So he made clear the quid pro quo was as long as you guys don't vote to convict, then I'll stay in the Republican Party at least through 2022. Don't want to start a third party. The Republican Party is my party. So I thought that interesting substantive information. He went long.
He did.
I think he ended up late and then went long, which has been sort of Trump's MO of speaking of late. But I thought it was a solid, but first of all, it was more of a threat to run, not a guarantee to run. In fact, there was a lot less of that than I expect. I expected him to give more of an impression that he would run than he actually did.
Yeah.
So that was one part. The second part was, I thought it was a solid speech. I'll tell you one thing that struck me by his early presentation, demeanor, disposition. He clearly has been badly isolated the last 2 months.
Yeah.
Because he came out almost hesitant, almost doubtful, almost trying to defend himself rather than being really aggressive. Now, as the crowd woke him up, because that's Trump, he lives off that crowd, then he shifted into a more aggressive. He started riffing here and there. He was trying to figure out how far to go in certain places. How much could he riff on the idea of men participating in women's sports? And he saw he got positive feedback, and he he even said he had been advised not to even discuss the topic because it was too hot. I mean, that tells you he's got 2/3 of Trump's advisors are still crap.
Yep.
There's the good news is Corey Lewandowski's back involved. Good news is Don Jr. is taking a major role. Bad news is he has those idiots, Bill Stepien, Justin Clark, who ran the campaign into the ground, who were the complete. I guess he still doesn't know. They were complete obstacles during the election litigation. Complete obstacles. They were not helpful at all. Their whole goal was to hustle cash under the false information, basically massive fraud, to sucker a bunch of people to send the party a bunch of money, and they were constantly misrelaying resources and misplacing resources meant for election contests into other party activities that had nothing to do with Trump. So, and he was hoodwinked into putting those two people in charge of who he's going to endorse. These are the last people that they should have no connection. They should be fired. And then you have Jason Miller, who decided to block me on Twitter, apparently. So something we talked about last week must have got back into Trump world. And apparently Jason Miller took it badly, even though I wasn't specifically talking about him. But now that he's blocked me, I'll specifically talk about it.
Now you got me curious, Robert. Let me see here.
I mean, people who don't know who Jason Miller is. This guy is, look, I don't mind being dumb.
See.
I don't mind people being corrupt. But you don't combine the two. It's the worst combination. And Jason Miller was the genius who during the campaign in 2016, during the peak of it, in the Las Vegas debates, decided he was going to go, even though he's married, decided he was going to go hang out in a strip club where half the journalists in town are going to be hanging out, so everybody's going to know you're there.
You're really telling the story.
So that's idiot step number one. And idiot step number two is he was not only having affairs with other members of the campaign team, he knocked one of them up. This guy's dumb on top of dumb. I get he grifted his way into Bannon world, and then he grifted his way into Trump world, and now he's the spokesperson. This guy, he just kick him to the curb or give him a low level, make him the bodyguard at the door or something.
I gotta tell you, Robert, real quick, because you mentioned his name before you go on election night. It was Bill, where I'm like telling Bannon, and I'm like, Steve, they cannot go to sleep. These margins are not that big, and they were being told, well, what are you telling me, Rich? I'm hearing there's 800,000 votes ahead in Pennsylvania. I said they will decimate that in Allegheny County and Philadelphia County. In Wisconsin, it'll be very, very close, but there will be a Milwaukee dump when you go to bed. Everybody needs to be in there right now watching all of those poll workers. And it was Bill coming back and saying, well, we spoke to people in Milwaukee, and this is what they said, Robert. We talked to even Walker's people, and Walker's people knows that state better than he does. And they've been in these tough battles before, and they have the votes. The president will have a big lead by the time this is over. I'm like, don't go to sleep. Do not go to bed. I mean, Robert, I couldn't have been any more forceful. It was Bill. From what I hear, it was Bill.
Oh, yeah, no doubt. Bill Stepien and Justin Clark first of all, totally mismanaged the campaign, didn't understand that Georgia and Arizona were as close as they were, thought some other states were closer than they ever were, didn't recognize how competitive they didn't realize how competitive Wisconsin was. Yeah. I mean, remember, they spent all their time in Pennsylvania, spent very little time in Wisconsin.
That's right.
Thought Michigan was a goner when it was actually still competitive.
Again.
They thought Nevada was closer than it. I mean, they should have known from day one what we were talking about, which was in a legitimate, normal election, Nevada was very close. But when the legislature passed all the crazy rules, which if you understood the law, it meant the Supreme Court was never going to set aside those rules because there, at least the legislature passed them. Yeah. But, I got multiple ballots in my house. So there's no doubt that, the flood of ballots in their signature check process was a crock. Yeah. And if you understand every judge in Nevada, for the most part, owes some political allegiance to the Harry Reid political machine, you knew that this state was gone. It was worth taking a shot, but not spending tons of time in or money in. Instead, you should have camped out in Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania. Go nowhere else. Yeah. Maybe occasionally stop in Florida, Georgia, North Carolina. They didn't realize how close Georgia was. Their campaign, they were the ones who put that campaign team in Georgia, the hierarchy that was such a disgrace. They managed to lose the presidency and the Senate. I mean, that's how bad they were. That was Bill Stepien and Justin Clark's people. And so these guys, they were interfering with the ability to do meaningful election cases. They were partially behind what was going wrong in Georgia from the get-go in terms of managing the election litigation and as well as managing the campaigns. So they were problems. People had to, in order for me to get involved, people had to circumvent them. And so it's no surprise. Trump has all this leverage he wants to use with his endorsements. And the first guy out is a mediocre senator from Kansas who spent the last month bashing him.
Yeah,
That's
I was
the first
just going
guy
to say.
Trump endorses.
The first question
it's
we
because
got.
Bill Stepien should be fired yesterday, and Justin Clark should be fired yesterday, and Jason Miller should be put on bodyguard duty, where hopefully he won't knock up any other Trump campaign work.
Oh, Lord. And the very first question we got, Robert, was about this guy, McConnell bragging about how, this is the first endorsement we get, and then in exchange for it, this is what I try to tell people about Mitch McConnell. I mean, this is who he is. In exchange for it, he comes out and tells the media that he would support Donald Trump again in 2024. McConnell has no core. That's the kind of quid pro quo kind of thing McConnell lives by. But in the end, it won't save you from him backstabbing you. I don't understand how these people don't get this.
Three little words are the perfect explication of McConnell's backstabbing.
Yeah.
Amy Coney Barrett.
Yeah.
I wonder if they're going to send us apologies. Hey, Larry, Larry Schweiker, you can send it to Richard to apologize to us for about Barrett. All these people that Barrett's a great, smart, brilliant justice on the conservative core and blah 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 blah, and we were warning that she's a major problem, and the big one was on election cases she's unreliable. Yeah. And what happened? She was the failure. If she votes for cert, then it's taken. She was the decisive vote for whether the election cases get heard, at least after the election. Yeah. She was before the election too. And both times she fails to step up to the plate. That's Mitch McConnell. That was a Mitch McConnell recommendation, a Mitch McConnell appointee. I don't blame Trump on Kavanaugh because Kennedy said he wouldn't retire unless Kavanaugh was.
He had no choice. Yeah,
Kavanaugh was an improvement over Kennedy, folks. So. Imagine if Kennedy would have been the kind of prick to step down while Biden was president.
Yeah. He would.
So no doubt that was an upgrade. But Barrett was entirely McConnell's choice, foisted onto Trump with the exact purpose of gutting any election cases going to the Supreme Court. And in the most consequential arena is where McConnell betrays you the worst. So listen,
he makes it count.
Bill Stepien and Justin Clark are looking past Trump. They're thinking we want to be friends with the Mitch McConnells of the world. We want to be friends with the Republican establishment of the world. So we'll keep steering Trump in the right direction. These people are not loyal to Trump, and Trump world needs to get that message.
Well, yeah, let's play that clip from Donald Trump, which everybody, because when I said I didn't hear it. And people who want him to run were like, "Oh, you're talking about he made this going right on." And I'm going to play the clip right now. It's all over Twitter. But this is what everybody heard that made them, including people Laura and I, know. Believe me, we're in a very Trump-friendly area. All right. So including just average people who are like, I want to hear what the former president had to say. And this is what made them think he was going to run again. Let's do this.
We've had tremendous victories. Don't ever forget it. With your help, we will take back the House. We will win the Senate. And then a Republican president will make a triumphant return to the White House. And I wonder who that will be. I wonder who that will be. Who will that be? I wonder. Standing before you today, I am supremely confident that for our movement, for our party, and for our country, our brightest days are just ahead. and that together we will make America prouder, freer, stronger, and greater than it ever has been before. Thank you, CPAC. God bless you, and God bless America. Thank you all. Thank you. We've had tremendous victories. Don't ever forget
all right,
it.
I don't want to read it. All right, so the point is, he waits the whole speech to drop it, Robert. Okay? He waits the whole speech, and he made some references, but, that was nothing like that. That was the least veiled reference he makes. And he waits the whole, he talked. He went on and on. He went long in this one. And he waits the whole speech to drop that, and he equivocates a little bit. And people are like, how could you take that as being, equivocal? That's Trump threat. That's a Trump threat. When you get to understand how he operates, that is a Trump threat. I wonder who it could be. Just like, I just may have to run as an independent if you don't get behind me. Remember that, guys? All right. I may have to start a new party. That's Trump's way of saying, if you don't get in line, we'll wreck. And it doesn't mean he won't, like, if you don't force his hand, it won't. But it does mean he's not committed to it right now. He's just not. And that was a threat. That's classic Trump threat, Robert.
He wants the leverage. He wants the possibility.
Yeah.
But he hasn't yet decided whether to do it. And I think I found the speech revelatory at levels that I was paying attention to certain aspects of it that maybe some other people weren't necessarily, which was one, his tone, his tenor, his demeanor, his disposition. And it was clear at the beginning stages of it to me that he had been locked up for the last 2 months without access to honest, accurate information because he came out with almost a defensive, quiet, low-key tone or tenor to a certain extent compared to normal Trump. And the second part, so I think that was it confirmed what I had suspected, which was the wrong people have been around him and he's been too isolated. And it's a reminder that Trump is best the more he's out talking to his supporters. That when he's surrounded by the group of people, 2/3 of the people that are still running Trump camp don't understand Trump and don't understand Trump's voters and don't understand how to connect the two.
Yeah.
And frankly, some of them are just flat out grifters. Some of them are really establishment insiders pretending to be for Trump, like Lindsey Graham, in order to get, credit to Peter Navarro. Peter Navarro is starting to call out lots of people. Now,
yes,
Peter Navarro is someone that should be deeply embedded in Trump camp because he was consistently the most loyal guy, other than Stephen Miller, that was there long term under Trump.
I will say
Mark
too,
Meadows was also much more loyal than people understand. But Meadows was not there as long as either Navarro or Miller was. But Navarro was like anything. Lindsey Graham gave the worst advice, and so there's a reason why Navarro is saying this publicly now. It's because Trump is tempted continually by staying with establishment insider advisors versus being true to himself. And he started that August of 2016 when he took a big media beating, but he counterbalanced that by having, his inside advisors being Steve Bannon. So he stayed on course in lots of rallies. But the beginning in late, early mid 2017, he went this route. The other thing I thought was someone has clearly told him not to use his hands, his illustrators.
Yeah.
And it drives Trump crazy because that's why he's gripping the
I do it all the time from New York.
His body goes back. It's totally unnatural for him.
From
it
10
looks
miles
unnatural
away.
for him. And I wish
Right.
they just be Trump. Just hammer, just be free flow. You're no longer president. You don't have to be under this cat where anything could lead to supposedly nuclear war or whatever. Just go back to being more pure Trump. Have the speech as like an outline. Don't have it be these specific words, and use those illustrators. He has the best illustrators probably in the history of politics. For people who don't know the body language stuff, you can watch the body language, behavior language panel, and it's exactly. He does. Also, they're subtle,
it's vintage,
brilliantly subtle. Like I never realized until I saw his illustrators during 2016 campaign. I was like, why did he always talk? He say when we were. He defined his campaign visually, starting coming down on the escalator with Melania. And I didn't quite get it because he would always do this thing. And I was like, that's not an escalator. And I was like, oh, okay, I get it. I was like, oh, that's why he keeps saying Melania. Escalator, right, okay. So it's brilliant use. It's subtle. It's subconscious. I mean, that's why he uses the OK combination. There's a bunch of these versions that he uses that are really good, and to see him still contained like this, like the caged lion, was irritating, and it was a reminder that he's still getting lots of bad advice. So the first half of the speech I saw as a sign that he's been getting bad advice now for months. Confirmation to me of what I had heard and what we had heard and what we also suspected, which was a lot of things that happened in the last 20 days of his administration happened because he was given terrible advice. See what happens when you go with your base. See what happens when you go with your instinct. People do an insurrection at the Capitol, and now you're going to be convicted, and now you're going to be criminally prosecuted, and blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to say that, because I think that's where this comes down. And real quick, before I get into that, Navarro is his office. You know, I told a lot of stories about the people calling me after the election and asking me to explain to them what happened and how it happened, right? The only one who asked the right questions was Navarro. That's it. I mean, that is it. And by the way, that's why our stuff is in his report. He got it. He understood what really went down. And everyone else was all in different directions, Robert, that were irrelevant. And then I will say, I can't help but to wonder how much of this is he was concerned about lawfare after this. And it's the establishment who will, this is who they are. All right, so if you do things this way and you don't step over these lines and you talk this way, you behave this way, show us you're reasonable again, and then people will back off of you. That is a horrible mistake. He is the symbol that he is, no matter what he does or how he behaves. He is always going to be that symbol which they need to destroy. So this idea that all of a sudden being a nicer guy or doing things differently and not being true to you, it's really what you just said. Being true to yourself is going to change how they feel about you or how they behave towards you. That's nuts. That's crazy. These are ideologues. That tells me they don't really understand who they're dealing with either, you know?
Correct.
They don't know who they're dealing with. They're not your friends across the aisle. They will see you buried in a shallow grave. They don't care about how nice you are or how proper you become. This is, first of all, that's all a 20th century sham anyway. Our presidents were never like that. Never. None of them. I mean, really. So this is about winning for them. It's about power for them. No matter how you change your personality, Robert, they're not going to shift their goals. They're always going to have you have to go. You have to go and be made an example of, so this never happens to them again. And they don't get it. They're like collectively Jeff Sessions or something.
When you bow to a corrupt king, they use it as an opportunity to chop your head off.
Yeah.
They don't use it as an opportunity to forgive you. And so and so clearly it was interesting. So I saw the first half of the speech as reflective that he's still got a lot of bad advisors around him, that he's been getting a lot of bad advice. He's been getting that bad advice for months, that his state of mind was more defensive. And then as the crowd woke up to him and as the crowd reacted to him, you saw him start to re-energize. And I think it's part of why he went long, is that he was going off script at a good number of places. I mean, he was about to have a real fun rant on having men compete in women's sports.
And by the you want to win some more seats in Connecticut? Fire away. I mean, this is what these people are not smart.
It's
Robert.
insane to the average person to have, and Trump would have had some righteous rants. I mean, he was starting to go on, these people show up and they're breaking all these records, women's weightlifting records. All of a sudden, they're lifting 300 pounds. Kind of doesn't look like a woman that's doing it. But I mean, he had a whole line, and then he pulled back. He's like, man, people told me that I shouldn't talk about this topic. And I was like, what moron is telling you not to talk about it? That's a perfect, wonderful Trump rant. Yep. You can combine old New York construction style politics with everyday populism because the country does not want men dressed up as women competing in women's sports. Yep. The Equality Act that just got passed by Congress is not popular. I mean, Richard will be testing it in the polls.
Yep.
And just wait, and people will see that there's a reason why the media is not poll testing this. There's a reason why the media is not talking about it in detail. Do you think men should, by a lot of people born as men, should be able to compete as women in your little girl sport? The answer is going to be, what the
are you talking about? Right. Even I got some rabid liberals in my family. Women, you're very, very upper educated, advanced degree, suburban but middle upper class, and I love them to death. They're fam, but they're crazy, man. They're crazy. And if they're watching, they're like, you know what, Richie? Because they know I'm talking about them. That's why we try not to. I mean, they know what I do. But we try not to discuss politics. But even they didn't like to. They don't like two things, Robert. One, these defunding the police things and burning cities, they don't like. That's number one. And even though some of them may think that there are injustices, but they do. They're right. But they don't agree with anarchy. And then two, this women's sports thing. And it's funny because in their minds it's only one way, right? So it's unfair to women for having men, participate.
Men
in
are
their
not
sports.
worried about women competing with them in sport.
Yeah. It's only one way in their minds.
I mean, we've seen some of these. I mean, some of these things I thought were memes. You see, like the guy who joined the Australian whatever, one of those teams. You're like, what? It's not just like any guy claiming now he's identifying as a woman. Right. It's like some 6'4", 260-pound NFL tight end. He's going to play on women's handball or something. You're like, what the fuck? This is a South Park episode going on steroids.
Don Smith had It the Potato Head as a joke 10 years ago on his shows. It the Potato Head, a new toy by Hasbro. Your kids identify as different gender today? Don't worry, It Potato Head has you covered. It was a joke, man, a joke, but it was the hermaphrodite stuff. That was a joke, and now here we are. You
would have done it because he'd known the media would have latched onto it because they would have seen, look at what a shocking statement. But that people would have been like, hold on a second. I totally agree with Trump on this. And it would highlight the right issue for Trump to highlight. So, I liked seeing some of the old Trump come back. I was frustrated that the old Trump wasn't there all the way through. And it was a sign both of what his strength is. He's still the strongest, smartest, populist political voice with a real base anywhere in the country, period.
Without a doubt.
So if you support populism, Trump is still the best ticket to it, whatever his flaws may be. But it also revealed the limitations are still present. Not just the limitations that hurt him throughout his tenure, the limitations that will restrain his ability. If Trump had a bunch of conventional political people run his campaign in 2016,
he would have lost.
He may never get elected.
Yeah, he would have lost.
Because he refused to hire those people. He went with total outsiders, and he's doing that a little bit. Also, but he's not doing as much as I would like. Now, on the upside, his willingness to go outside the RNC for fundraising was critical. And you could tell he was a little bit hesitant about it because he said, here's the site, but we really kind of got to go this way. But what he's really starting is don't give money to the Republican National Committee. Give money to the Save America PAC. Give money to the go to the Donald J. Trump. I think it's DonaldJTrump.com.
Yeah, I think so.
Website. I thought he could have had more fun with that. There's ways for Trump. I mean, the guy's the greatest salesman in the history of politics. There's ways to pitch that, and he was almost a little hesitant the way he went about it. And and I think again, he's got all these people whispering in his ear that they're giving him bad advice.
Don't make enemies.
He's got like 6 devils on one shoulder and 2 angels on the other.
Don't piss off Rona. Don't piss off Rona. Don't make an enemy out of Rona. That's what they're doing.
Why does he still have John McLaughlin around as a pollster? Did you hear what John McLaughlin told him?
Did you see what they released it? Yeah.
He said, Trump actually talked about this. Said, John McLaughlin told me that if I got 66 million votes, we were locked in to win.
That shows you everything you needed to know, Robert, about what the state of mind that they had going into this election, right?
And for folks who don't know, John McLaughlin was his pollster.
Yeah.
As Richard knows, long history of him faking poll numbers or coming up with questionable poll numbers. Let's put it that way.
And poll numbers his clients want. That's the worst. That's the worst.
And just bad insight, bad advice. I mean, what I heard was that he had Trump up in Nevada in a bunch and had him way down in Michigan and down in Wisconsin by 5 points or more.
Yeah, and in Georgia he was up by that. It was like 6 or 8 or something.
That's what I heard.
6 or 8.
They had a different story afterwards. That's why McLaughlin, Miller, Stepien, Clark, all should be gone. They should be nowhere near Trump world. And he should be bringing in different pollsters. We both know some people that are good at pollsters that could give some advice. that would actually have accurate polling. For those who don't know, the public polling project that Richard ran throughout the fall was almost dead accurate everywhere.
Yeah, we need to.
Had Arizona narrow, said Minnesota wasn't competitive, when I hoped that it was actually. Showed that it was competitive throughout the rest of the Midwest. Showed that Ohio and Iowa did not need any time spent in either state.
Off the map.
Florida was in the bag. And so he got bad advice from these other people. So the main thing Trump needs to improve upon, he still needs to improve upon, and that too was evident in the speech, though more indirectly. But also the gift that is Trump. What Trump proved, what CPAC showed, is this is Trump's party.
It is.
Any illusion otherwise is dead and gone.
Look at the straw poll. We got what's the straw poll? I had them up there. It was in the ticker too. What's the straw poll?
It was like 95%, I think.
Approval was 95, and then for the 2024, he was way ahead. DeSantis was in second place with 21%. He was at 50 something. I mean, and CPAC. The CPAC spelled his name wrong when they released the poll and the straw poll. They really took a pounding for it. It said Ron DeSantis, and I mean that's not how it was in the tablet when they were polling. Because for those who've never been to CPAC, there's tablets around for the straw poll, and you wait online if you got to. Most of the time, it's not that long. There's a bunch of tablets, and you go and you vote, and on the tablet it was right, but when they released it to the media, CPAC 2024 presidential straw poll, DeSantis. But yeah, his approval rating was I think second only to himself, which was when he was president. Or he may have topped it or something. I don't know. I have to go back and look. But nobody, even George W. Bush, no sitting president has ever had a CPAC straw poll approval as high as Donald Trump. And this is a guy who everyone was supposed to question his conservative bona fides, right? I mean, this is like, think about how much these people in the conventional wisdom has led astray. And by the way, there have been these, I've noticed, and there's going to be apparently a hit piece. So let me just do this right now. First of all, we polled more than 6 states, idiots. All right. So if you're going to try to wrap your head around something complex like statistics, you should probably learn basic mathematics like how to count to 10 first. Ohio were off the table. They were off the table. They weren't close. I did whole hour shows on them and showing inside the polls. It was not close. Robert, do you remember when the Epoch Times hired me to do the Rust Belt poll? The first call was to you, man. It was like night 2, and I'm like, this isn't close at all. Do you remember that? And I was like, Ohio and Iowa are gone.
Your national poll nailed it to a T.
It did. So Biden plus 4.
All of it ended up exceptionally accurate, even in places that I had hoped otherwise, because I frankly missed a couple of groups. We got to get rid of the Yankees. Got to send them to Canada. If you have English ancestry, we got to get you.
Oh my God!
Mass deportation for too many
English
ties to the British. If you have ties to British colonialists and you weren't on the revolutionary side, you got to go.
I got to bring up what Laura said when you made the comment. It was like you guys said it almost exactly when you said that you don't bow to the king because they'll lop your head off. That's exactly what Laura said, almost verbatim. And they're monarchists, man. It's like they are the remnants of the loyalists in the colonies, man. They're loyalists.
You look in their closet, and there's a red coat in there.
Yeah.
So that's who they are.
So awesome.
But your polling nailed it everywhere. By far the most accurate polling across the board for really the 4th straight cycle. And yet McLaughlin, who's never been known to be very accurate in his polls, appears to manipulate the information to fit a certain narrative for a particular candidate or campaign. Not considered well reputable in either conservative or liberal circles.
Yeah.
And yet he's still involved in Trump world. He should not be involved in Trump world. Get rid of him. Dump him. It's time to move on from that.
Pick one of the other two if it's not, somebody we know very well is sitting on the show. Right? Pick one of the other two. But there's only like 3 of us who know how to do this.
Exactly. I mean, there's you, Susquehanna, and Patrick Basham. That's really it. And to be frank, your polling was better than either one of those, and across the board.
Well, I like Jim a lot, so I don't take jabs. I like Jim.
Better.
Jim, Susquehanna.
Susquehanna, it is a great guy, but your polling was the best. It just was. And so he needs better polling people to give him better data information because he's constantly misled about it. It makes strategic, tactical errors, and I mean, in particular, where he's going to really have leverage is who he chooses to endorse or not endorse. And
worse than
I am
flying
not
blind,
confident at all in the people that are around him. I mean, he himself was even talking about, maybe I shouldn't have endorsed McConnell. I went back and forth on that, but I helped him a lot. It's like, yes, who told you to do that? Who told you? Some of us said bad idea. And so maybe it's time to start listening to people who are right, not the people who are wrong. So that's the main area of concern I have for Trump. The good news out of CPAC is when you start to see Trump be Trump, he's the most dominant guy in the room by far, dominant guy in the party by far, dominant person on the political scene by far. The media cared more about covering Trump at CPAC because they need Trump for their own ratings.
They do.
So Trump is still the engine, that runs the entire machine. And if he will exercise it, and it was good to see him not in a resignation mode. But that's not a surprise. When I talk to him, anybody that's known the man, there isn't a pessimistic bone really in his body. The guy doesn't get pessimistic. Everything is optimistic. Every obstacle is just an opportunity. He doesn't understand pessimism. He finds it's psychologically foreign and alien to his whole psychology and being.
Yeah.
So it was great to see that reaffirmed, and that he's going to re-engage, and he's definitely going to get revenge. Everybody who voted for impeachment is going to be a target. The key is making sure that they're effective targets, that the people around him are not giving him the wrong people to endorse against them, because that will be the main goal of the establishment. Establishment knows those candidates cannot win in any of the primaries they're in. Washington's a unique deal because it's a jungle primary. And so, I mean, she won with a Democratic support in the first place. So that people don't fully understand that. But putting that race aside, all of the other House races and then Murkowski and some others in the Senate, and he did call everybody out in the House that voted against him for impeachment.
That's what people asked, if they could have a list. I said everyone who voted for impeachment. That's it.
I would supplement that list with some people that we know behind the scenes who helped orchestrate aspects of that.
Yeah.
People like Thune and some other folks need to be targeted too. He's not currently focused on that. It's apparent. But that's because he can focus on, that person voted for impeachment. I definitely want revenge on them, and I want them out of the party. But understanding the broader strategic context of who helped orchestrate that led those people to vote that way, and involving some high-ranking leaders, is where he's still missing the boat a bit.
Yeah.
Because he's getting bad strategic advice. He's still getting – the only people giving him good advice are Corey Lewandowski and Don Jr. And now it's great to see Jr. much more involved, because Jr. was sort of always on the outskirts while he was president.
Yeah, lawyers over here
Trump paid attention to him through his Twitter account and the rest, but not – he needed to – Don Jr. he's the best political analyst within the Trump world by a pretty long mile. Now, the most natural politician is Laura Trump within that.
That's I'm telling you, that woman, and I don't know that they can hold that seat without her. I'm at this point now. My second state is really close, man. We have the triangle.
Only Trump carried Burr across the line. Only Trump carried Tillis across the line.
That's it. These people did have a coalition that didn't vote for Trump, right? And this is why they get confused. The same thing happened with Purdue, and it led them astray, and they made the wrong decision because they had bad data. There are these establishment senatorial candidates who will get more from the Trump coalition than he will get from them. But without the Trump coalition, they don't have 50%. They don't have it. So this is why they'll look at Tillis and say, well, he did a little bit better, actually. Or Purdue, he did a little bit better. I think Trump weighed us down. I mean, it's a very simple way of doing political analysis, and it's dumb. It doesn't cut it anymore. The Democrats are much smarter than that. I hate to tell everybody, but they are. There's some very, very smart Democratic strategists, and they have Republicans' number on this. They got their number on this, and they've been beating them with it for years, and they don't get it. If it wasn't for Donald Trump, the Electoral College itself would be gone right now. It would be gone. There was no Virginia coming back. I mean, these people really believed they could win Virginia back and put together this, basically, you had to run the table. It's like playing 9-ball, and you just got to run the table because you miss one and it's over. One shot, and the other guy is going to clean up. And that's the way the electoral map looked until Donald Trump came along and added 5 more states, basically. 5 more states, which they ignored several.
If you looked at evangelicals, evangelicals are underrepresented in the Electoral College.
Absolutely.
As long as the Republican base was an evangelical-driven base, it was at an Electoral College disadvantage. That's why Democrats loved the Electoral College up until 2016.
That's right.
What Trump recognized is that working-class voters, particularly working-class white voters, are actually overrepresented in the Electoral College. They have more power through the Electoral College than they would in the national vote.
And they don't flex
And by shifting the base, he gave the Republican Party a 2, 3, 4-point edge such that they could lose by 4. I mean, you look at it, the national vote loses by 4.4 points. If he loses by 4.1, he wins the election.
Yeah.
I mean, if just the right shift of votes. So you can lose by 4 votes nationally now and
40,
win
and
as long as the working class vote is the base of your party, rather than the old school country club church coalition vote, because that's underrepresented, and you're dead basically. You're a dead man walking in the Electoral College, and that's key.
And look at what they did the last time they had a crack at it. They nominated a Mormon in the hope they can drive out evangelical turnout. This is how stupid these people are. Think about that.
I love it when there's some documentary where Romney goes up to some old guy in the Midwest, and he's like, "Don't bother. I ain't vote for no Mormon." And again, nothing against Mormons. I'm just saying they're not the most popular religious group in America. They're just particularly not with evangelical Christians.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just reality. You know, I mean,
true.
There were some old Tennessee phrases about, but I won't get into those. They'll be problematic.
Yeah, Lauren knows a couple from
led to
Oklahoma.
some fights and people shooting each other and whatnot. But there used to be a lot of jokes about Mormons, basically.
Yeah.
So it's just the nature of it. There used to be a lot of taunts. Not like, I mean, I grew up, we used to taunt the Catholics, but I mean, that was just the way of it. Mary had a little lamb.
I remember.
Oh yeah, I mean, you grew up in like the old school
Catholic.
evangelical South. That's just you get into some mostly good-natured conflict, but man, some Catholics got mad once. They tried to beat us up. We had to hop in the bus. But it would be they're completely disconnected. He should purge that part. He hasn't fully. He's still getting his sea legs. That was the most interesting part to me of the CPAC speech, is that he still wants to get involved and engaged, and that's very good. But he's still getting his sea legs, which means there's time needed for development. And hopefully he starts making a few more moves. So I'm hoping that as Corey Lewandowski, I mean, the good thing is the actual controller of the funds is Corey Lewandowski.
Yeah, that's a
very
positive.
Important.
Yep.
And Lewandowski has smart instincts across the board. Same with Don Jr., who now has an affirmative role. In fact, it appears he's going to be replacing Kushner. Because you notice there was no reference. Kushner didn't show up at CPAC. No, and all the leaked stories don't have him even in the room. So Kushner might be moving back to the business side, which is where he's the most skilled, period, right?
Seven election panels, Robert, not a single person that was involved in the fight.
Yeah. 7
election integrity panels. I was told that on Saturday. Somebody was like, "Do you know how many election integrity panels are slated in this thing? Do you have?" Because I guess the CPAC straw poll too. Election integrity was the number one issue for Republicans by a mile, and they had nobody who was engaged in that fight on those panels. They had nobody who was a canary in the coal mine.
Version. They wanted
the fake version.
Slap is trying to do his own election integrity project. The Republican National Committee announced an election integrity project. They're not serious at all. If they were serious, both Richard and I, at least one of us, would have heard from them. We didn't. We have not heard from them once. So what CPAC is doing is not straightforward and not trustworthy and not reliable. What the RNC is doing is not safe, not trustworthy, not reliable. It's just a fundraising scheme.
It's a grift. It's a grift.
It's a grift. It's a grift. I mean, that's why, it's always funny that people that the CPAC types criticize of grifts, and I'm like, CPAC has been a grift itself for the last decade.
Well, Robert, in truth,
and for folks
I got a call.
And one last point. Schlapp runs CPAC. He took $750,000 to try to hustle a pardon for somebody. That's who CPAC is. And I hope Trump quits monetizing people like CPAC. I get why he did this speech, because it was a comeback speech, etc.
Yeah,
but don't make CPAC the axis of your operation. Create your own TPAC. That would be an interesting group. Do your own thing. I mean, Don Jr. made the joke about it, but really there should be a separate one, because who would go to CPAC then? if Trump did TPAC the same time as CPAC, just a few miles away,
you'd crush it.
2/3 of CPAC's audience would be empty, they would be losing money, and the grift would be over. I hope that there's full understanding with Trump on that. It was good to see he's going to punish all the people on the impeachment and reward people on the election side. Ted Cruz stood with him on the election. Josh Hawley stood with him. Jim Jordan stood with him. Mark Meadows stood with him. Matt Gaetz stood with him. Those were the people that CPAC wisely promoted because they knew that's what their audience wants. But they don't want to actually give substantive reform efforts because they just want the disguise of it.
This is what they have always done.
Esoteric academic discussions, but let's not get too controversial.
Yeah, and this is what they've always done. And I will say real quick before we get off the topic of, and not to bash John over the head here, but having bad data is worse than having no data at all, especially like somebody
absolutely.
for Donald Trump, because Donald Trump's instincts are probably right, and then he'll get bad data and it'll shift him in another direction. So, and for those of you who don't know, because I'm looking at this audience,
you got to focus on just the suburban moms, and what they want to hear is a Romney-like message. You just got to calm down your cultural language.
You're way ahead in Georgia. Yeah, I mean, for those of you who don't know, I'm not trying to like professionally assassinate this guy. I'm simply saying I've been on opposite sides. I've been on
mediocre pollster. He should still not be working.
Robert is a lot less I get, but I can't disagree. The bottom line is I've been on the opposite side with this guy. I've been on similar sides. I've been in other primaries with him, and in every single instance, he has misled his client that I have been involved in. He misled Bibi Netanyahu in Israel. He told Bibi that all they cared about, Likud, they just got to continue to champion national security, and that's it, and you'll cruise to election victory. And we could clearly see that the Israeli voters were getting pissed that he did not make good on some of the economic reform promises he had made in the prior election. It was like 38%. That is big in a parliamentary election. You're not going to win these huge governing majorities if you can't carry more than, or if you have 4 in 10 voters that are thinking of not voting for you because you didn't make good on that promise. And then in Florida, Florida 27. I remember Eric Cantor still. All right. Remember Eric Cantor, folks? He used to be a GOP leader in the House, but John told him he was 13 points ahead, and this little known guy named David Brat had no chance. And Dave Brat was clearly going to win that election. We had him up by 8 points, and the number one issue was immigration. And every time we've been involved, across the whatever it is, across the, from each other or on the same primary side, he's always gassed his client and never given them the right data. Salazar was never ahead of Donald Shalala in 18. Robert, never. It's killing me, man. It's killing me.
Yeah, well, it's where the improvement needs to happen, and we saw it in the speech. So as a whole, I thought it was a solid speech. I thought it would have been much better if Trump was Trump rather than caged Trump. And I thought there were some areas where, I think the speech was defensive just because that's where Trump's state of mind was.
Yeah.
But I thought it could be just attack. I mean, I would highlight a few things in your past. Say, look, under our administration, we had the lowest unemployment amongst everybody, but now unemployment's going in the wrong direction. Yeah. I think he'll recognize how valuable energy independence is. How often did he not run on that in the campaign? He gets in front, and you could tell he was almost surprised by the audience. He's like, they went nuts over energy independence.
Do you remember the fracking?
Jobs, livelihoods, whole communities depend on it.
Yep.
And it was one of his great achievements.
And
was energy independence, because for a lot of people, energy independence means jobs, good jobs. When I was in Pennsylvania, the number one thing they thought could save them in 2016 was fracking.
Yeah.
Throughout old coal mining country, especially. So that was a.
Do you remember the numbers in the polls? Do you remember the numbers in the polls we did?
And overwhelming in Pennsylvania, they supported.
And they didn't believe Biden was going to hurt them. They didn't believe that enough. They just didn't.
And that's because he didn't hammer. I mean, he should have. It should have.
At the end,
hammered it throughout the
too
debate.
late.
Hammered it throughout the campaign.
It was too late.
It should have been twofold. Not just what Biden could cause harm, all the achievement Trump had made.
Yeah.
I mean, that's where parts of New Mexico was shocked when they're like, hold on a second, but Biden's going to take away our fracking leases?
Yeah.
Really?
Yep.
They had no idea. And that's in part because the Trump campaign was busy talking about other things.
Yep.
And you could just see in live time when he goes, under my admin, we had the most energy independent we have been in modern history. And the crowd erupted. And you could almost tell he was like, oh, wow, that's a big resonant issue. No, of course, because it was always a big resonant issue. And it's why West Virginia is Republican
now.
Today.
That's right.
It was disappointing to recognize even more detail how much he had been led astray by bad data analysis, because that's coming from data people.
Yeah.
So if you were doing the polling for his campaign, could be, here's the points that really resonate with the constituencies who can move. Instead, he was getting calm, toned down. Don't talk about these issues. Highlight, just use the word socialism 500 times.
I know, like, people care.
Yes.
It's first of all, fascism is the word that scares everybody, not socialism. And the worst part about it is, and we've been talking about this a lot lately on the show, they are fascist. They never were socialists because they believe in private ownership. They just believe that the government should dictate that agenda. That's a freaking fascist. That is the economic definition.
It's complete. It's corporate. Corporate tyranny.
Yep.
And like that was one of the big, most resonant lines throughout CPAC, no matter who was speaking, including Trump, was attacking this new corporate tyranny, big media, big tech, Wall Street combined power. And I think Trump instead, Trump was still talking about 401ks, but he didn't get much response from that because people are like, okay,
and CPAC is filled with kids. They don't,
that's not the number one issue. That's not in the top 20. But he was clearly being given advice that it was. And I'm sure some of the Wall Street people, Larry Kudlow and others, were always pitching that when they were in the White House. Oh, talk about this is why it's so good for you, Trump. As long as the Wall Street's going up, you'll get reelected.
The 401k is to the suburban woman, dude. That's to the suburban working women. They don't even know who their audience is. CPAC is filled with a bunch of young conservatives. And then you have the older grifting crowd that we talked about.
You just look at who's popular in the media circle. Right? Like, I mean, that's why the plot against the president people were there. RSBN was very popular. The Epoch Times was very popular. Yeah. Tracy Beans has been kicked off of Twitter. I think it's uncoverdc.com. She was there. That's who's popular. And that's who people want. And that's who the core conservative populist base is, which they should have recognized by the transformation of Rush Limbaugh. Now, that's the other thing is, they had a decent, spectacular tribute to him. But if you're running if it's TPAC instead of CPAC, you have multiple panels on Rush Limbaugh, his history, his legacy, different time periods he went through. How can we replicate it today? It's conservative activists in different space. There was very little of that. Instead they just tried to feed the red meat without actual red meat. It was like it was that fake burger from Burger King that they pretend is a burger.
Yeah, but it's made of vegetables.
Yeah, it's because it's impossible. It's not a burger.
Or not even vegetables. What's that crap made out of? I don't even know.
I have no idea. I don't want to know what it's made of. Some Bill Gates concoction.
The Bill Gates burger.
That's what they should call it. Exactly. Probably made up of little African and Chinese people. Some Uyghurs and given the way Bill Gates is, look up Bill Gates' obsession with things. But yeah, and that's another thing. If I was running a TPAC, I would start changing adversaries, not fictional socialism, but instead, something that's not going to really resonate in this world. We're not in the 1980s anymore. Instead, Bill Gates is a great adversary. George Soros is useful in a certain respect, but Bill Gates is the new one. Yeah. Bill Gates is the lockdown guy. Bill Gates is the fake science guy. Bill Gates is the climate apocalypse guy. Bill Gates is the big tech connected guy. Gates is a perfect enemy to rally around.
Yeah, I know leftists who don't like Bill Gates, Robert.
Oh, there's a bunch of people that hate Bill. That's why he's perfect.
Yeah.
They can't try to, like with Soros, they try to claim it's anti-Semitic, which is garbage.
Yeah.
Can't claim that with Bill Gates. So all the easy outs they have to defend Gates just aren't there. And he's a universally reviled guy by anybody who knows him. And it crosses the political spectrum. And when you're seeing, look at who was popular at CPAC. It was anybody that was big, that was on Trump's side on the election or against lockdowns. It's not a coincidence that Noam, the governor from South Dakota,
Yeah.
and then of course DeSantis are the most popular behind Trump. It's because
not an accident.
And then Hawley and Cruz and Gates and Jordan on the election side. It's if you're election side and you're right on the lockdown side, those are the two big driving issues for the populist Republican base. And if you're not talking to those issues and you don't have substantive proposals for those issues, you don't have a political future in the near short term.
Yeah, I tried to the basically person I got in mind for the Granite State or the Silver State is somebody who has been on that side. I cannot stress this enough. And I got emails from you and I, Robert, when this all started, going back, saying this thing's going to turn. And when it does, those who were speaking out against it beforehand are going to be revered. All right, they're going to end up on the right side of this thing. And there are very few people out there that we were plucking away looking for candidates. There are very few people that are, I don't know what the word is, but could be competitive, that really fit the bill, that also did that. So many people, including just way too many Republicans, just completely fell in line and went down the groupthink tunnel and just made fools of themselves now. And now they're trying to do, some of them are trying to do 180s, and you should warn people to look out for like these fake, anti-lockdown people who now say things like, if you hear somebody say something like this, well, now this study shows. No, the data was either always there, like in the case of school closures, or it was not there because it was an ahistorical idea that has never in the history of the freaking world, in recorded history, has anybody proposed to force an end to commerce to combat a virus. Never, ever, ever. You can't show me a period in history, Robert, where that happened. You simply cannot show me one. Not in ancient times, not in modern times. Quarantines are not the same as lockdowns. And if you hear somebody make a comment like that, like a David Brooks in the New York Times, that was a great column, except David, the data was always there. What are you talking about? Right? So those are those fake anti-lockdown people. And they're looking around at who to find to fit these, to come off the bench. It's not easy, Robert. It's not easy because they're not that many.
Yeah, very few. And as I was telling people, in terms of Kristi Noem or DeSantis' ability to be on the 2024 top of the ticket, I think they're very good
vice presidential
nominees right now. But to be at the top of the ticket would require clarity on what some of their, because on both trade and even to some degree war, they were not so crystal clear on the Trump side of the equation in the past. I mean, even DeSantis wasn't really on the Trump train early in 2016. DeSantis has governed very effectively, but there's some areas of clarity that are needed there. The other limitation is, I thought DeSantis' speech was solid. I thought Noem was more presentable than I thought she was, but more at ease.
I agree.
She stylistically very impressed with how she presented. They neither one is Trump. Hawley and Cruz tried to do their imitation. Neither one of them is Trump. The problem is, I was explaining to someone, someone was saying, why does Hawley always look so stiff? And I was like, and Cruz, same thing. I was like, because they come up within the political class. And the problem is these days, the way you're trained to be a politician is counterproducctive for authenticity.
Yeah.
And you need people that like you came out of the preacher tradition or came out of the old school oratory tradition. Or things like that. And Trump in his own way did. He came out of the salesman marketer tradition. You need someone that, Jesse Jackson, like if I was training
like a more
a young
polished
would-be
version
populist politician, I would say quit watching other politicians speak. Watch Martin Luther King speeches. Watch Jesse Jackson speeches. Watch the old Kennedy speeches. Not so much the younger, but the older Kennedy speeches. Watch other great oratory. Well, some of Reagan, but Reagan himself was not. He was more a good quip guy than he was a long speaker guy. Look at some of Mario Cuomo in back in the day.
Oh yeah. He was.
He was. A city on a shining hill. So there's watch, like, the reason I learned a lot of my speaking capabilities from reading and watching old oratory and the Black preacher tradition, especially. Because in the Martin Luther King MLK mold, I would watch Malcolm X. Malcolm X does brilliant speeches, but he's more analytical, more classically political, but still brilliant rhetorician.
Absolutely.
Knows how to be. Why? Because he had to learn to speak on the street
been
corner and be
bamboozled.
successful in Harlem.
Hoodwinked.
So you have to get the crowd out. If you couldn't get a crowd out in Harlem and you're competing against some of the best speakers in the world, you're going to learn how to speak effectively and persuasively. Almost none. I mean, like, how many of these people's speeches could you watch more than 5 minutes unless you were really interested in the topic?
Yeah.
It was boring.
By the way, the hoodwink bamboozled speech by Malcolm X, he was talking about white liberals, by the way. All right.
Mm-hmm.
That is Malcolm X couldn't stand the white liberal. All right. So some of these people that come up with their own versions of history, Robert, it's nuts.
He compared him to some animal, but I'm forgetting which one it was.
Right. It was a swine, right?
Maybe it was
or no,
swine.
maybe it was that.
It was something that could be by disguise and then hit you at night.
Oh, well, then it was probably something like a wolf or something like that. Maybe
Actually, it may have been wolves.
Yeah, I think it is. Well, yeah, I think it may be wolves. But in that speech where he says you've been hoodwinked, you've been bamboozled, he's talking about the white liberal who wants to give basically black Americans crumbs off of their, and poison themselves, their bodies, their families, their morals, their virtues. I mean, down the list, all to serve them. It's amazing how. I know people who love him, and he was viewed to be radical and is still viewed to be radical, yet they'll vote Democrat. It just doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense.
It's like, and play to the person's style and skill set. In other words,
that's
learn
what they
how
all
your
did
own
well.
Like with Trump, he's a jazz man. And the greatness of jazz is its random riffs. It's creative, original riffs. And they're sticking him in a band orchestra.
Yeah.
Demanding he sing according to the, and it's like you're killing what makes Trump Trump.
The hands on the podium thing, that just so people know, that's
why
what they tell
weird
you.
Body movements.
Yes,
He hates being contained. He's a natural lion. Let him out of the cage.
They'll give you the advice, because I do it, and I've been told when I do public speaking, that the hand thing, I just decide, Laura's like, let it go, and, this is you. This is who you are. Let it go. And the hand thing is what people will tell you when you're a hand talker. Put your hands on the side of the podium and control yourself, right? Robert's rolling his eye. He knows what I'm talking about. And you can't do it because it manifests in other things. You'll start to move your body. You'll forget where you are, and you can't do it.
And you're just not naturally. Trump's passion comes out when he uses his illustrators, when he starts doing this. That's when it's Trump's being Trump. And to contain him otherwise is just counterproductive. Yeah. And walk away from the podium some. Don't trap yourself behind a podium, because people trust you more as a public figure. Mark Bowden, who's part of the behavior panel. People can look him up on YouTube. They do a lot of great body
great stuff.
Yeah, the quartet of great body language analysts. Those are the kind of people that Trump should be hiring for various feedback and advice, rather than the schmucks that are giving him bad advice. Because one of the things they will tell you, and many of them work for public figures around the world, is to get outside from the podium, because you look more authentic, more vulnerable, more accessible, because you're not protected by anything.
Yeah,
so it's just a physical trick of podium. Connectivity. And they're not letting him do that. They're clearly telling him not to do these things. And it was frustrating to me to see him still be at least mostly caged in his public presentation post-president. I mean, I got, while you're president, you got a bunch of people.
Yeah, but everything's not a presidential debate, Robert.
Exactly. I mean, it's over. Go out and be accessible, be open, be Trump. Reinvigorate yourself as well as your audience.
And he does look like, I've heard this from multiple people, that, he was banned from Twitter, but he actually feels like better. That he's not on Twitter. It's not constant hate and vitriol that he's got to look at every day. And he's like, I should have been off this damn thing a long time ago. That's what he's been saying, right? But we were saying this before you came on. He's the only president I know who got less wealthy, while he was president. But also, he looked better. Physically, Donald Trump looked better. He does not look like your typical president where, like Barack Obama, that office did him dirty. I'm real, right? He came out there looking like a gray 60-year-old man after he was supposed to be the young, youthful, vibrant, young president. It was horrible what that. Everybody, George W. too. He went in there looking pretty, young. He wasn't that young, but he went in there. But he went in there looking, still kind of sharp. Came out looking like. Lincoln, you know, I mean, right. You know, like Abraham Lincoln was aged horribly from the office, apparently, from what people say. But Donald Trump, not Donald Trump. He looked good.
No, it looks exactly the same. And that's where, like, I want to see more Trump humor, Trump jest, Trump playing around with these different things, Trump confidently defending himself and confidently critiquing the other side. And there were glimpses, but not as much as there needs to be, in my view, to really for Trump to be reinvigorated himself. I mean, the good news is Trump is still Trump. The good news is Trump is still going to be engaged. The good news is Trump's putting some quality people around him. Bad news is there's still a lot of bad advisors around that are restricting and restraining his ability to reach his max capacity.
Yeah, you said something too before that, you know, once Bannon left the White House, you really could see a difference in how the strategy was to keep connection with the voters, right? Anyway, we basically said that he should just travel all over the damn country, right? Constantly.
Yeah.
He was the best.
Why not do a Trump tour? Sell tickets, monetize it. You can do that now without a problem, without a hindrance, and just Trump be Trump. And make it interesting, engaging, exciting, involving. You know, you're not as controlled or cabined or contained as you had to be while you were president, and help reinvigorate the base and use it as an organizing tool and use it to, like, the problem during the whole campaign, his whole presidency, is all of the information from those tools went to the Republican National Committee. So he needs to reinvigorate, figure out who's his base now, and only he has that information.
Yeah,
only he's raising that money, and he can leverage the organization, the information, and the money to make the targeted influence he wants to make with the right people around him to do so.
Yeah, that came from, what was it called? Data center or something? I forgot what they called it, but their permanent data operation. Basically, he has to, you know, if he really wants to do something serious, he's going to have to rebuild at least some of that. I mean,
he needs to create an independent infrastructure separate from the party.
He needs his own infrastructure, period. Right, Robert? He needs his own infrastructure, and data is included in that. Honestly, after the 2020 election, and I got to see some of their tools, but after the 2020 election, when some of these state parties were calling for help, they were getting, access to, I think it's called data. It's slipping my mind, something very simple. But when I did get to see what all of this money built, I was less than impressed. Because I'm getting sent lists that they're pulling from them to be able to cross with who did what, how did each people vote. It was not even completely accurate, and some were missing records, and I'm thinking to myself, oh my God, how much money was spent on this tool? They put a lot of money to that data operation. A lot, and touted that they were doing it. And if I have an absentee ballot list in Georgia, and you send me yours, okay, from DataSet or whatever it's, I think I'm getting it right. You should know every Republican who voted by election on election day, or every Republican who voted by absentee ballot.
And you should have been flagging issues in advance, filing suit in advance, all based on that information.
Yeah,
I mean,
and some of it was wrong. Some of it was just wrong, Robert.
Exactly. I mean, the fact that people were voting from locations that appeared to be mail drops, which is illegal in Georgia, was known, available to be known over a month before the election in Georgia. And yet they said and did nothing because they weren't even tracking it.
Yeah.
So the people who ran, I mean, and again, that goes back to Bill Stepien. That goes back to Justin Clark. That goes back to that loser crowd that needs to be canned. Yeah,
and speaking of the devil, I'm getting a call right now, wondering from Bannon, right? How could this be? And it's an article in The Hill about Biden's approval, right? Being a top 60%, right? This is what we're talking about, guys. I mean, we could talk about this real quick right now if you want, but we do want to do this monthly poll, Robert, and I want to do this monthly poll, and we'll ask questions the right way. So, for instance, how we have this one of the questions, because I've been on the questionnaire for all weekend, not do you support a pathway to citizenship for dreamers or people who are here illegally?
Do you believe that there should be a pathway to citizenship offered when there are 10 million Americans out of work, right? So that is what, and wages are falling, all right, or not rising at the same rate.
Another way to say it is just use the legal terminology. Do you think people who broke the law to be present in the United States
That's really
should be
the way.
allowed to be citizens and
Yes.
vote and have the same rights as you? Do you
Yeah.
think people who broke the law to be in the United States should get welfare benefits? Do you think people that broke the law to be in the United States should get free health care and free education?
We also have
Because
one
when you
about
ask
whether
it
they
in
should
terms of what its
dismantle.
real world impact, its actual sort of legal and practical, it's not going to find 60% support.
We
and
also
we'll find-
have about dismantling the border wall. We have one on those because I mean, the amount of money it would cost to even dismantle what they've done. That's another thing, by the way, he did not tout a lot, Robert. We have to be, fair here. He did not tout the
he talked about it
progress on
some,
that
and
wall.
he started to see the reaction and started to go more into detail than the script called for. I think he realized, immigration's back. Biden has reinvigorated the immigration issue.
That's
that
another
had kind
one.
of
He
receded since Trump won.
Yeah.
That was big in 2015, but it kind of receded. It wasn't a big issue in 2018, 2019, early 2020. But because it's back, because what Biden is doing.
Yeah.
Biden's
That's another
immigration
question.
proposal, and this will be one of the things we test.
This is another
Test
one.
things like
Yep.
the crazy aspects of the Equality Act so that people understand the practical
right.
components of it. Do you think a Christian school should be required to have a transvestite teach kindergartners? Do you think a 3-year-old or 5-year-old or 10-year-old should have a civil right to change genders against their parents' wishes? Some of
Oh,
because
we're
that's
going to
some of
hit
the
third
things that-
rails, man.
Exactly. That's the kind of things the Equality Act does. Ask about H.R. 1. Do you think it's a good idea to allow people to vote, to allow criminals to vote by mail?
And
from prison,
16-year-olds.
from jail? Because that's the net impact of that, by the way, in part. Some of the other absurd provisions, real job approval provisions. So like some of the polls that are coming out, somehow Biden's job approval is substantially ahead of his personal favorability.
Yeah,
That is
Robert,
pretty
I
much-
got the raw from Rasmussen last night. Okay, and they're like, oops, I opened Safari on accident. I wanted to show you, just to tell you guys, this is the way they're relying on a few things. They know the response bias is real. They know the social biases are real. The cognitive bias is real. They're relying on that now to mislead, and they got to be doing it on purpose. But when weighted correctly, I got the raw from Rasmussen playing around with it. And what they found was that he had a negative, his approval index is negative, but also the number of nonpartisan, right? Because we said you affiliate with any political party. I don't know how they possibly could have Joe Biden in the 60s when his NPA his NPA approval is now underwater. Strongly disapprove was 40%, man. 40% among that group.
And
It's
to their, I've
it's
been
not
tracking
possible.
YouGov. You dig into their internal data. It's basically he's at the exact same approval rate that the final result was in 2020.
Yeah.
So that it's he's around 50 to 52%
I would buy that.
approval.
Yeah.
And I think when we do it, we'll find him somewhere hovering around 50. And that he basically still has almost all the people who voted for him, but he's made no inroads whatsoever into the Trump vote.
The last
And
one
what's
we had, he
starting to
lost
happen
some working
is
class.
his own supporters are starting to drop off bit by bit by bit by bit. Wait till they don't get $2,000. Wait till they don't get a minimum wage increase.
Yeah.
Wait till he continues to cause wars everywhere. So the biggest, he's already had some erosion because of what he's done on energy. And I think that Trump
That's right.
Trump's people around him have not communicated to him that the energy independence it's about China, it's about jobs, it's about less war. It's all of those things for a lot of people. That for them, if we're energy independent, we don't have to be involved in the Mideast anymore. If we're energy independent, we don't have to be rattling the cage with Russia anymore. If we're
never
energy
made this
independent,
case.
we don't have to fear China's rise as much.
Yeah.
As well as if we're energy independent, we have really good, high-paying jobs. Some of the best working-class jobs in America are in the oil and natural gas industries. And so I think Trump but I think that's a whole, and some of those things we can poll. And what we'll find is if we get an honest poll, we'll see that Biden's basically right around 50 to underwater.
And
I mean,
let me
'cause-
just tell people, like, because that was a good question. You have to understand, guys, what do I mean by that relying on this? You have to understand, like Robert and I were talking about Wisconsin. I had said for months, and I was trying to make this as clear as possible, Wisconsin is a very tough state to poll. But also, just to let you know, the raw data in Wisconsin was like Biden plus 13. I'm telling you that they're relying on response data because the people who are most willing to take surveys are more Democratic-friendly voters. That is a reality.
especially in the pandemic era.
Absolutely. Without a doubt. And it wasn't always this bad, but it got considerably worse. There were indicators that Robert, you had really good ideas. I mean, the ancestry stuff was big. We were always focused on education and Nate and region, because region tells you a lot about people. But you could just keep polling and build up a bigger sample. But if you're still getting them from the same geographical location, it doesn't matter. It will just be a bigger number that's saying the same thing. That is the difference between our Wisconsin Biden plus 1 or 2 and their Wisconsin Biden plus 6 to 17, because they would get these raw numbers and say, whoa, all right, let's just wait for the usual, which typically is party, which is not right. You don't wait for party.
Particularly the geographic aspect is one
time.
aspect that your polling has mastered for years that people underappreciate, especially in the Trump era.
Pound.
Like I was telling people why I thought Wisconsin was the best of all the Midwest states for Trump. I said it's simple.
You were right about that.
It's almost 70% rural or small town.
Yeah.
Minnesota is 60% twin cities and suburbs. Michigan is 55 to 60% big urban areas and suburbs. Same with Pennsylvania, but not Wisconsin. Milwaukee and Madison and Green Bay are just not that big.
Yeah.
They're about a third of the vote collectively, including the suburban areas in those counties. I mean, even their suburban wow counties, about a third of the vote in each of those counties is rural. It's small town. I mean,
That's right.
I spent law school there, did a lot of legal practice there. So and that's where, like, I mean, another example is like what happened in Kenosha in the Rittenhouse case. That was something that Trump could have used to highlight the importance of self-defense, the importance of how these outside agitators are trying to destroy a small Wisconsin town and these Antifa types. And I'm sure his people said, "Oh, stay away from that. That's too hot." Not if he would have done it right, because people are terrified and feel terrorized when they find out the facts there. They want someone to defend them against that kind of stuff. So there was a bunch of mistakes that he made. There was Wisconsin's, but the big one, of course, was failing to hammer home at the anti-war issue, because he
remember
did better
those
amongst
numbers too? That was
he did better amongst the
major
Norwegians,
failure.
but and worse amongst the Scandinavians up north and those northern. But he would have done even better amongst those Norwegian voters if he would have hammered the anti-war message. I don't think he brought it up in either debate.
You guys can look at the numbers. Robert and I just popped right out at us immediately all through those states. I mean, Wisconsin, Minnesota. Minnesota really was a major. I mean, they just didn't see Joe Biden as somebody who would, start a conflict.
Well, that's why they're shocked. That's why you're seeing,
that's
they're like,
right. Right.
People are the random social media Twitter people. They're left here. Hold on, like what? But Biden's pro war. What are we
bombing Syria?
Bombing?
Yeah. And it's like
So much for no war.
so much
That's
for
been
no
Joe's
war.
whole life. There's never been a war. He didn't want to. Remember
right.
the great Trump line from his convention, from his acceptance of the nomination speech, where he said, Biden sent your kids off to die and your jobs to be lost, or some combination.
Your kids to die in Iraq and your jobs. He sent your jobs to China and your kids to die in Iraq or something like that.
Exactly.
And that should have been his whole damn.
And he
campaign.
almost never repeated it throughout the entire campaign. And that's how there could be people out there that are anti-war. Like, all of them knew Hillary was pro-war.
By the way,
that
Trump, that
a lot of
speech,
people did not know Joe Biden was just like Hillary when it came to war.
and that speech, Robert, at the convention, he this textbook Trump, he wrote most of that, almost all of it himself, and he does this for people who don't know. When he was president, when there were speeches like that, and he did it with the State of the Union too, but when there were speeches like this, like a convention speech, he hid it from people. He would wait for the last minute. For those who don't know, speech writing in the White House when you're giving a State of the Union or something is a big process. You have the speechwriter, it's going back. There's if one sentence is edited, then the whole team's got to see it again. I mean, it's a crazy process. Trump took all that, put it on its head, and that whole process was vaporized. And for something like a convention speech, well, not vaporized, but for something like a convention speech, we would get excerpts, right, Laura? And then an hour later, he'd give the speech, and like 3 sentences would be different. And you can tell Trump decided at the last minute, no, I want to say it like this. And in that speech, it was scorched earth. And and that was the tone to set for this campaign, that campaign.
It should have been repeated over and over and over and over. Like even in the CPAC speech, I thought there needed to be a lot more about that. And I think he too was surprised that when he talked about, hey, I had these peace accords, that were extraordinary in the Mideast, and now they're all in jeopardy. And he got a big crowd reaction. And it's like again, he seems surprised. He was
Pompeo
like, no,
did
this
too.
is an anti-war party now.
Yeah.
This is not, the John McLaughlins of the world still think W's coalition is a viable coalition. That's the era that he comes from as a pollster. That's why he's not, it does terrible polling. The same with a lot of people that are clearly around him weren't reinforcing taking on the deep state was popular. There's a reason why the Plot Against the President film was there at CPAC. It was because there was a lot of interest in it. That the guy who worked for, I get his name wrong, I think it's Cattell, but the guy that worked for Devin Nunes was a very popular guest for people on radio shows at CPAC because, maybe it's Patel.
Patel.
I'll have to figure out a way to remember that name. But the point after L. Okay, yeah. To mind vault it.
That's a good way to do it.
He underappreciated that was still. I mean, it's now more clear than ever how he got hoodwinked into not pardoning Assange, not pardoning Snowden, not releasing classified materials, not pardoning everybody in the Bannon case, not just Steve Bannon. It's because he was told, oh, you're in big trouble. You've been a bad, bad boy with all this election stuff, and you riled up the crazies, and it's all your fault, and you better be really nice, and maybe we'll let you back into the club and let you back into the prep school. We won't expel you and send you to prison.
That's right. That's exactly what
he bought all that hogwash, and it was always hogwash.
And to say this as clear as possible, there is nothing Donald Trump can do to turn off his supporters except betray them and not be true to himself. It doesn't matter how crazy
to satiate his adversaries, no matter what. So he might as well stick with his base, screw his adversaries, and go and be Trump. That was the genius of Corey Lewandowski throughout 2016. Kept telling people, including Bannon when Bannon came aboard, let Trump be Trump, and that's when Trump's at his best. And it's because he's authentic. And people feel it. People sense it. They get the energy. They get the empowerment. They get, it's interesting. It was like the way Hunter Thompson's first wife described Thompson. That she said, that he had such energy. It was like she was almost addicted to him because of the power of his energy. And Trump's the same way when he's Trump. When he tries to be like little third grade, put on my tie, go to Sunday school Trump, that isn't Trump. Trump's let him out on the playground and let him beat up the bad boys.
Yeah. And for people who don't know this about him, I mean, he's not by far not a spiritual guy, but he was raised in a church. I mean, he went to church. He wasn't like one of those,
He went to the optimistic church.
That's what I was just gonna say. That's
optimism is part of Christianity, kind of thing.
And listen, Robert, I belong. I'll be honest. I belong to that school of thought. I do. That's why when people say, Rich, how are you doing? I'm living the dream. It's the power of positive thinking. And I 100% do believe it. Our founders were like that. Our founding fathers believed that you make your own happiness and God wants you to do that. All right. So I know it's crazy. I'm not going to get into a debate over theology. But
I mean, I love Trump's. I'd like to see some of Trump's old lines come back. Yeah. Like when he talked about Art of the Deal. He would say, my second favorite book, Bible Court #1, Bible #1. Art of the Deal is the second favorite book. All that old Trump stuff, just reinvigorate, reestablish. Though the other component of CPAC that was interesting was even the leaders of CPAC recognize the whole party's axis is Trump. It's either Trump or nobody. It's either Trump.
Ted Cruz flatly said it. Ted Cruz flatly said it. And he did. You got to give Ted Cruz credit for that. I mean, he basically said.
I still have some friends. 2016 convention. I told them all, don't. You need to get Cruz aligned with Trump. It would be a major mistake. It's some of the same people advising Trump right now were in that room telling Cruz that the way to go was to attack Trump at the convention.
Yep.
And I was telling them, no, you're all idiots. And I was clearly right, because I said Cruz will be begging for Trump's support by fall. And of course, by October, he was in the call room, calling for Trump. But to Cruz's credit, he has managed to come back from that. But it's he's nowhere near Trump level. Nor is Hawley, nor is DeSantis, nor is Noem.
Yeah.
And they're poor man substitutes for Trump at this point. So
I would worry about that.
It's their Republican Party's best chance in 2024, and populism's best chance in 2024 still has the last name Trump attached to it.
Yeah. I would worry about that. I would, because everybody else is just going to look like they can't, the
comparison doesn't look
right.
good.
It doesn't look good. And it'll come across as weak and a bad substitute if it's not the right one. And I just don't see anybody filling that right now. And when I'm listening to his speech, I'm thinking, this is clearly not what I heard in 15, which tipped me off he was going to do it. It's not what I heard. And this is why I am, look, some people think I'm right. Some people think I'm crazy. Don Jr.'s more active role is a plus for the Trump movement. He's the only other one.
Him and followed Trump world. Trump Jr.'s been ahead
always on the right side. Yep, he's almost always on the right side of where the smart are. That's a better way to put it. That's a better way to put it.
Campaigning. I watched him campaign. He's by far the best retail person out there. He actually likes people.
He does. That's a great way to put it, Robert. He sat coach, man. He sat coach one flight. You remember that? And he just puts his earbuds on and flies in the 3 rows when everybody else it's really, and somebody stopped. Oh my God, it's Don. Hey man, how are you? He's so good at it.
Favorite relationships growing up was with his Polish plumber grandfather on his mom's side.
Is that right?
That's who he is. That's why if you watch him, he'll quit more quickly attached to a blue collar person than another person.
Yeah.
And that's very rare for someone who grew up in his economic status, and it's because of certain unique life experience and personality disposition. But he was the most person-friendly, most personable individual in the entire extended Trump world, including definitely Trump himself. Trump is more power.
Yeah. Without
Trump Jr., you could tell he actually liked to talk to you, liked to engage you, was curious about who you are, very friendly. No snobbery at all.
Yeah, I saw him at and I always kill this Pennsylvania. It was an event in Pennsylvania. Wilkes. I always kill it. I always say Wilkes Bar, and it's not Wilkes Bar. What is it, man? I know I'm sorry, I'm not Appalachian.
My
Wilkes Barry Bar.
I think it's Wilkes Barre or Barry.
Yeah.
I get it wrong, even though my paternal great grandfather is from there. So he was a old school Welsh miner. But
it's just mingling it with these workers, and there was a group of older voters there too. And I remember saying to Laura, I was like, this guy could win, not 400, but he could win 300 plus electoral votes if he had experience under his belt. He could do it because he's different than his dad.
What I've been trying to tell people in his world is, I think where he's a natural is out west. Montana, Wyoming, the Dakotas, somewhere around there. Run for governor.
Yeah, take a governorship somewhere
and build your governorship, because he's a natural out there. He looks like he was born in Montana.
I tried to DM nudge him.
He loves the hunting. He loves the outdoors. He loves the whole thing. So probably a political hurdle for him a little bit is Kimberly Guilfoyle. God bless her. She doesn't have to dance every time she gets on stage. But I like her, but. That's always going to, but out west it will be much less of a hurdle.
It's
The reason is out west is not dominated by old school conservative evangelicals like the South is. There are going to be people who aren't going to be happy about that aspect of his biography. Whereas he's more natural out west. I mean, those are all loggers and ranchers and those kind of and cowboys.
Yeah, I don't
that's
care
the
about
culture
that
out
stuff.
west. It's not so much a prudish culture, and he's a much more natural for that environment, and he comes across like he's always been from there. So it's like Yellowstone. He looks like Kevin Costner. Yellowstone.
Yeah.
And it would be a good national image to project long term. But I'm definitely glad that he is much more involved in Trump world, and I hope his father continues to elevate his references. But that's the other reason why they need to get rid of Bill Stepien, get rid of Justin Clark, and reassign Jason Miller, particularly Stepien and Clark. Those guys are traitors. Those guys will betray you in random. They're untrustworthy at a whole level. So there'll be constant problems undermining you and everything you try to do. And they'll do it in sneaky, sleazy ways because I witnessed them effectively do so in the post-election contest. So those are people he needs to purge from influence around Trump.
Robert, I don't understand. I get Trump likes to reward what he views to be loyalty, but I don't understand when you don't do a good job. Okay, then you don't deserve to be rehired or continued employment. Right.
And I think he underappreciates how much these people were treasonous and traitorous towards him at key junctures. Not only incompetent, morally untrustworthy individuals. And the reason why, like some people have asked why we've been more vocal since the election, it's because frankly probably should have been more vocal before the election. Because a lot of things came back, a lot of chickens came back to roost because trying to be nice and delicate and diplomatic about serious problems, and those serious problems proved too serious of problems, and don't want those problems to reoccur or reappear. And so to what degree the platforms we have want to get the message out that these are untrustworthy, unreliable people that need to be nowhere near Trump world.
Yeah, they just didn't see. They didn't see
they think
anything, Robert.
You're going to leverage Trump's great first endorsement for a mediocre second-tier Trump critic from Kansas?
And it shouldn't have even been right. That wasn't even a look. Let me tell the president this right away. Those endorsements will dilute over time if you make especially if you make the wrong ones. Robert, we just it was like a month ago.
And let's be honest,
it was a month
made a
ago.
lot of
we
bad
just
ones
met.
when he was president.
It was a month ago we just met, right? And had dinner and decided on a strategy. This is how you would do it. And you have to pick and choose your battles and make examples of people. And I don't know what the hell what's going on here. It doesn't make any, there's no politically advantageous.
Haphazard. It showed it was establishment corrupted.
It's corrupted. Yeah, it's establishment.
He's going to find another Big Luther Strange to endorse.
Yeah, it's a favor.
No more Big Luthers.
Favor.
Trump thought he had a good nickname who would work, and he dropped talking about Big Luther 5 minutes into that Alabama speech. So he needs, now he realized it was a mistake to re-endorse Lindsey Graham, mistake to re-endorse Mitch McConnell. He didn't have to get involved in those races. Could have leveraged some counter-influence, particularly as to McConnell. Probably made a mistake by not doing so. Probably could have taken out McConnell in 2020. If he would have supported an opponent to McConnell, McConnell loses in the Kentucky primary.
No doubt, without a doubt, Robert, I can tell you that right now. He would have lost. McConnell's favorability rating among, and it's not just what we saw in the most recent national numbers, his favorability rating and his approval rating, not just all voters, among Republicans has been in the dookie for a long time. He could have taken him out, no problem. Rasmussen, by the way, do I still have it here? I don't think I do, but I have it on my browser. I could pull it. 8%, Robert, strongly approve among Republicans of Mitch McConnell. That's nationally. In his own state, he's been high 30s, low 40s for a long, long time. And I've seen it even worse. Kentucky's this is a red state. This is a red state. You can't get that low unless you have erosion in your own party. You just can't. And he is winning by default because he's the only one with an R after his name. And then this time around, he probably had some real trouble until Trump stepped in. Not probably. He had real trouble until Trump stepped in because even Republicans can't stand this man. They can't stand him. And by the way, we did a whole show about that last week when that poll came out. What the hell are you even doing there? It tells you flatly, he doesn't give a damn about the country. He doesn't give a damn about the party. All he cares about is K Street and his own pocketbook. That's it. Yeah, I saw the Dr. Seuss thing. Yeah, Dr. Seuss this is another thing, Robert. Talk about wedge issues. You said before Trump immigration faded under Trump. That's because he solved it. And Democrats are very good at finding these wedge issues when the big issues like the economy, immigration, and healthcare are basically off the table. Democrats are very good at finding these little wedge issues to focus on, to draw your attention away from the things they broke last time. You elected somebody because they couldn't get it done with the big stuff. Like there was an Islamic Caliphate army marching its way across the Middle East, right? We forget about all that. But they do a great job at finding these little wedge issues. When Republicans find them, they get scared of them, like the women sports issue. And here's another one. This is Laura just sent, but I heard about this before. The Dr. Seuss books being banned in Virginia. Here's another one. Potato Head. Dr. Seuss. This is the stuff that really matters. And I think we lost Robert. Blanked out for a second there. I may have. It's 3:50. Maybe cut him off. I'll give him a time. We lost Robert, but I'll carry. These are the issues that they get scared. Not only don't they capitalize on them, they get scared. And here's Robert. He's back. It looks like he popped back on. All right. Yeah. Now let's see. Not quite yet. I'll have to wait for him to get back on. Do me a favor. I don't even think he knows he's off. Hit him and tell him he dropped. Re-click it. All right. But that's a shame because people ask me all the time, what states could Republicans do better in? Electoral college speaking. What states could they do better in? Because I always say this and it's true. Democrats do a better job of looking at the electoral college map and saying, maybe not now, but in one presidential cycle, in 2 cycles, 3 cycles from now, we could carry the state, like the state of Georgia. Maybe we can carry the state of Arizona. They did that to Nevada. They did that to New Mexico. They did it to Virginia. They're doing it to North Carolina. They are better at looking at the map and saying, this is where we need to focus our efforts in the future because this is where it could be better for us. Republicans are not. These are the issues where you could do damage in a state like Connecticut.
Yes.
Which is razor thin at the gubernatorial level almost all the time, and Republicans just don't play for. We had a series of elections in between under Trump's turn in Connecticut. They won a Senate district that hasn't been in Republican control for more than 3 decades. And it was all on that working class, kind of common sense, anti-radical shift, But then they let go of these issues, and unfortunately, they cannot keep these constituencies. They have an ancestral root voting Democrat, and it's hard to make inroads already. They can swing, but they may swing right back. And you need to hold on to them. You have to figure out a way to hold on to them. They're not good at doing it. They're not, and for a host of reasons we talked about already. That's about basically the end of the thing anyway. But he says waiting. Hold on, give me a second. We may go ahead anyway, and I do want him to say.
Yeah, to recap.
Yeah, let me give him another one, and let me. I got an idea. Yeah, let's have it let's bring him back in, and then.
Lemon wants to know, do we need.
There he is. I got him. I figured that out. All right, now I know what happens when that happens, Robert. I lost him again, son of a gun. All right. I think it's his thing, but I wanted him to say goodbye because I know he had a couple of things to say. There he is. Robert, can you hear me? Yeah, you can hear me. Let me bring you back in, buddy, okay? Because I was going to say we'll end the show, but I didn't want to do that without, going with our outro. If we're having connection issues, let's get it. What I was saying is, real quick, that Democrats are better at this, using wedge issues to look at that map and say maybe two cycles from now, 3 cycles, we could be competitive in these states, and we're going to do it demographically like this, and issues we're going to focus on are these. They do that, and they do it well. Republicans, they look at those issues, and they get scared. They get terrified.
Yeah, no doubt about it. So, I mean, it's good to see Trump back in the arena. The key is that for Trump to make sure he surrounds himself with the best people, and right now he hasn't done that yet. And once he does that, then he can have maximum effect that's maximally beneficial to the sort of populist conservative cause. If he doesn't, then he runs the risk of repeating the mistakes, and he could win in 2022 and end up with the people he's endorsed doing what they've done to him in the past, which is betray Trump and Trumpism. So if he needs to build a true team around him to leverage his influence in the best way, and hopefully he does that. And there's early indicia that he's part of the way there with Corey Lewandowski and Don Jr., but not all the way there as long as the Bill Stickens and Justin Clarks and Jason Millers of the world are hanging on.
Yeah, that's a good point. We can ramble for 2 hours so easy like that. We didn't get to go over some of the questions, but we'll have a chance to do that. I do want to get started on it sooner rather than later. I get these texts from people like Steve and others. How could this be? Well, let's find out. All right, so the links are in the video description on YouTube. You can always, if you're not watching on YouTube right now, you can just go to, and we'll go over the finances like we did during the public polling project. Nobody sent me an alternative to GoFundMe that really would work. So if you have one that's more transparent. So I had this great thing for PPD. It's not supported anymore, Robert, but it was great. It was like, you could set up a fundraising campaign right on PPD and then tell people what your goal is, and it would show a progress bar, right? It was really cool. Unfortunately, it's not supported anymore, and we couldn't find something as an alternative for it. So that sucks. But, well, we can use Venmo, we can use PayPal, and we'll just be transparent with how we do it. You can go to paypal.me/People's Pundit or Venmo.com/People's Pundit to fund the public polling. We'll do I'm telling you, this guy's approval rating is not above 60%. We've already done it 3 times. It never came close to that. They're relying off of response biases, among other things. But we'll also ask the issues. Yeah, we could do that too.
I mean, I could poll only Republicans.
We could poll only. Yeah, we can poll only rural America too, and we can put them at 35. I mean, what the hell? I mean, this is the way. It's just the way they're going to operate from now on. So it is important to have somebody else who, look, Robert, he'll pat me on the back. I try at least to be a little bit more modest. But the truth of the matter is there is only one test of a pollster and their accuracy, and that's Election Day. And they failed again.
If people want honest, open, transparent public polling, the way to do so is to support this effort. And for those who are members of People's Pundit's Locals Board, you can be part of the conversation about questions and part of a lot of inside information.
Yeah.
As well.
Oh, right.
So,
yeah. Yep.
So there are ways to make that possible. So definitely put those links out. Maybe put out a tweet. I'll retweet it because it's more apparent than ever. We're going to need public, transparent information because people like Trump are being influenced by it. They're seeing media polls that say things that are just they're made up. They're fictional. They're fabricated. When we look into the internal data, it's clear. But that doesn't get through to the main public narrative. If we want to get through to the public narrative, we need our own public opinion polling that has reliable authenticity, transparency behind it, so that at least the key people in Trump world are getting accurate data so they can know precisely what the issue is, which issues are popular and which ones really aren't. Yeah. Like, fighting the minimum wage. That's not real popular. Let the Democrats sabotage themselves if you're opposed to the minimum wage.
Yeah,
they'll
just shut
do
up.
so just fine. You don't need to make that a highlighted issue. Whereas a highlighted issue can be the Equality Act. The highlighted issue, the inequality of the Equality Act, the anti-woman bias of the Equality Act. You can make H.R. 1 a major rallying issue. Why does the federal government want to take over local elections? I thought that was all bad. Now, apparently, that's what they want to do. Why do they want felons voting from prisons and some of these other things that the bill would allow? And didn't enough dead people vote already? Do we need really big registration effort for more of them?
Right.
H.R. 127, massive gun control. And all of a sudden, they're going to talk to your ex about whether or not you can have a gun. You're going to have to go see a shrink about whether or not you're allowed to have a gun. In the modern world, where things like critical race theory are popular in psychological circles, there's hot button issues. Do you want, go back to the Equality Act? Do you want a man going into your daughter's locker room?
Yep.
Do you want a man to have a civil right to go into the girls' bathroom? Do you want men to compete in women's sports? We can highlight that these are popular issues for the populist cause to pursue that is being suppressed by the manipulative narrative of the media that putting out bogus polls or polls that fail to question the relevant, pertinent issue in a material manner. So if you want to make a real influence in the public debate, And then a way to do so is to support the public polling project that Richard's doing basically at cost and a lot cheaper than any other pollster out there.
Yeah, and I would say too, it's not just those demographics that everyone just focuses on these normal demographics. It was huge how we went into more they're not even demographics, they're like identifiers. It was huge that we did that, Robert. And when you're talking about these questions, because I was thinking about this on Saturday, I'm thinking to myself, there has to be a do you have school-age children identifier in there, right? You have to. So really, who the hell cares what every American adult thinks about school closures? Who cares what every American adult thinks about some of these other issues? We want to know our parents, and it is, by the way, going to be the case that everyone, it doesn't matter if they have kids or not, everyone's going to think it's crazy. But how crazy does the suburban woman we all focus on, who has a 9-year-old daughter or a 16-year-old daughter in high school, is trying to get a scholarship for running track, right? This is the stuff that the media will not focus on. And in fact, they'll intentionally not focus on it. They will intentionally do it like they intentionally left Ron DeSantis out of the 2024 primary, packed in 2 Trumps. I mean, these are the games they're going to play, guys. Somebody else. They won't focus on it. Do you have a concern for, right? Are you concerned with your child's safety if there was a man in the locker room with them, like Robert was just saying? I mean, they're not going to ask these things. They're just not. Do you think it's do we think it was important for Dr. Seuss to be banned? We could even get into questions like this. Is that a priority to you in your life?
Are you concerned with Joe Biden's level of
fitness?
Senility?
Yes.
Are you concerned with what would happen if Kamala Harris was president? Do you approve us bombing foreign countries that didn't attack us?
That is, we did the Syria question is in there right now. As a matter of fact, because I was working on the questionnaire when that news broke, and they said it was supposed to be Iran Shia rebel, Iran Shia militia.
Yeah,
I mean this is the
it's
story
amazing.
we hear
We're bombing
every time.
one country because we think another country did something wrong in a third country.
Yep.
What the heck?
Yep. And the truth behind that is, folks, the pro-Assad regime change crowd, which many of them used to call themselves Republicans, supported Joe Biden this time. And this is their payback for it.
And there's been a resurgence of ISIS-type activities in places like Idlib and other places. They saw it as a big invitation to that they're back in the game, and people should look up what's happening in Idlib. The people we're really supporting, Biden is really supporting in Syria. This is an ugly regime that would take over in replacement of Assad. Why we want to remove the last secular leader in the Muslim side of the Mideast makes no sense to me.
Just keep making the same mistakes.
Because I guess killing Gaddafi turned out so good.
Yeah, right. Exactly. It was the biggest. That was supposed to be Hillary Clinton's
this would be the kind of, and we might throw in a few fun questions like this, but if this was a media question, this was about Trump, the question would be, do you support the military strategy that led to live slave camps in part of a country?
And, maybe a little too early to ask some of this too, though, but this is another reason why I was kind of thinking that Trump should have been more 2016 Trump, because it psychologically, the electorate always does this. They look back at the last president and they're like, man, we didn't have it so bad. They do this. And if he reminded them of why they hired him in the first place in 2016, that sourness would happen quicker. It would, because the economy is not going to do well. It's not doing well now, and it's going to be doing worse. That's another thing. I do want to focus more on the economic question, because Joe Biden was never viewed as somebody who would be a good steward of the economy, and now it's only a matter of time.
And we're seeing with consumer sentiment, other factors.
Yeah.
So job approval in the economy used to be the most consequential. I do have to hop off here. I got to get on a client call.
It's that time, brother. It's all right. It's that time. Where can they find you, Robert? He's got to get on a call. Let's do this quick. Just go to the locals page.
VivaBarnesLaw.locals.com. For those who want to support it, peoplespunditdaily.com, where you can subscribe and make sure you're staying on the list. Also to the People's Pundit Locals page, where you can only get polling information, but also make sure you have independent sourcing in case YouTube decides to treat us like a Brazilian dissenter in 1970. And we'll go from there.
All right.
Peace
well,
out, everybody.
All right, Robert, take it
Have a good
easy.
one, Robert.
Everybody, thanks for joining. I'm gonna roll out of here too. It's we're a little bit over, but don't forget to watch Inside the Numbers on Wednesday, since we didn't have a chance to do it today. Wednesday, 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. We will go over that. We'll go over that. What's it called? That questionnaire in a lot more detail. All right. So with that, I'm gonna roll out of here because I do have some stuff. I hope you all enjoyed it. Don't forget to follow me on Gitmo Life at People's Pundit and sign up there if you haven't already. It's growing and it is a better user interface than Twitter. And support the people that you want to support. I'm still losing thousands of followers on Twitter every week.
And you can follow me.
And you can follow Laura, of course, at Laura
Gitmo
Baris.
Life.
At Laura Baris. And then Laura is a lot of times you're interacting on locals. That is her. If you have questions you want to see asked and answered on the questionnaire, shoot them over to us. We're saving at least 5, maybe even upwards of 10 for suggestions. We're not going to take your question exactly how you phrase it, but we will get the topic that you guys are interested in. The questionnaire is already like 30 plus, which is getting big. That's a big questionnaire. So maybe I'll wind up looking at some of the things I was thinking of already and seeing where there's synergy, between us on what you care about, and we'll go from there. But I wanted, like Robert was saying, to focus on what's actually in these bills. I thought that was important, because that's what we're going to be missing. All right. So with that, I'm out like trout. All right. And I will see you guys Wednesday, 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Do not miss it. All right, guys. All right. All the best.